When you highline often, you really learn to train your fear like a muscle. Sometimes the height isn't the scariest part. Sometimes it's the exposure, which is how much space you can perceive around you. My name is Faith Dickey, and I'm a professional slackliner. So slacklining is the umbrella term for all the different facets of walking on a flat, woven band. One of these facets is highlining, which is walking a slackline high off the ground. One of the best ways to train for highlining is setting up slacklines over water. When the current is passing underneath you, you automatically start to fall that same direction, and it's almost like you're not in control of your body. And that's great practice for highlining, because in highlining, when you're dealing with all the fear and adrenaline, oftentimes it feels like you're not in control of your own body either. Chamonix is a town in the Alps of France. And it's one of the places that really drives me in highlining. What's different about highlining in the Alps is that the whole experience is more intense. Being that high off the ground, you look at the valley below and the houses are just tiny specks. They look like toys. It's unbelievable. One of the highlines that I walked recently in Chamonix was on Aiguille du Midi. And when we reached the top, it was a totally clear blue sky, and we were surrounded by peaks. But during the process of rigging, the clouds started to roll in. It was like an acid trip walking the line. I was out there in space and exposure trying to balance, and the line was swinging beneath me. Meanwhile, these huge white clouds were passing, and the line would disappear, the anchor would disappear, and then it would reappear. And there was no way to control it. I just had to hang on.
Yes!
The beauty of the mountains is awesome, and yet it is a landscape that demands focus and respect. Alpine highlining is the purest form of the sport I can think of.
What's the highest you've ever slept at?
Almost a mile. When you don't have a fear of heights, it's not really scary. It's like being in the craziest treehouse that you can possibly imagine.
That's Mark Sinnott. He's a professional rock climber, and he's talking about sleeping in a tent.
They're called portaledges.
That's hanging off the side of a mountain. He's been climbing for over 30 years, and his favorite walls to climb are really, really high.
Alpine big wall climbing is
Here?
the pursuit of scaling the biggest cliffs on planet Earth.
Oh, and here. They take a few days to summit, so he has to camp out along the way. So I want to know, what does it feel like to sleep in a portaledge hanging off the side of a mountain?
The one thing that's more or less ever present in the mountains is wind. It can be pretty violent. You can experience hurricane force winds. There's also this thing that we call the Bronco ride. Wind comes in, hits a cliff, and it really has nowhere to go except for up. Eventually it hits you and your ledge, and it can lift the whole thing up. So you can be suspended, and then of course the ledge like slams into the wall. You're just thinking about surviving.
And that wasn't the worst of it.
The smell in the ledge is not nice. You don't change your clothes, you don't bathe. It's wicked scummy.
But people love it. They continue to climb and explore through all of this punishment because there's still that one question left. How does it feel?
The way it makes you feel is like a tiny speck of dust. It's very empowering. It really is just like kind of the most spectacular spot that you can be on planet Earth.
Feeling cold is physically painful. It hurts your fingers, it hurts your feet, it hurts your face. It's also potentially very life-threatening. My focus really is anything cold. So if there is ice or snow or a cold breeze, I want to go there. But I've focused mostly on the polar regions, both in the Arctic and Antarctic. Only 48 people have completed the unsupported, unaided expedition to the North Pole, compared to Mount Everest, where 6,000 people have summited. It's the most difficult expedition on the planet, to a place that few people understand. A lot of what we see on an expedition to the Arctic Ocean is nothing. It's like being on the inside of a ping pong ball, basically. You can't see any sort of differentiation from the sky to the horizon to the snow surface. It's also incredible to look out on a clear day and see the sheets of ice that are rafted together like blocks as big as houses, pressured in these amazing, incredible shapes. You can't help but just stop and be amazed. This is my third expedition to the North Pole. The Arctic Ocean is changing very quickly compared to a lot of other places. Scientists estimate that the Arctic Ocean will be ice-free in less than 50 years in the summertime. Unfortunately, we find ourselves not doing these adventures because they're there anymore, but because they might not be there in the future. Our North Pole trip realistically may be the last of its kind in history, and so it was very important for me to do this adventure so that people have an idea of what this place is like right now, so that we can look back and say, this is what we once had.
Every day, whenever I hear that buzzer, it just gets your blood flowing, your heart pumping, and you just take off at a sprint. You really don't know what you're getting into until you can see the fire. You're jumping out of a plane, that's always going to induce a little bit of adrenaline.
There are a few professions that captivate us, quite like smoke jumping. And I'm speaking with a woman who has been doing it for over a decade.
My name is Ramona Biuka, and I am a McCall smoke jumper in McCall, Idaho.
She jumps out of planes and into forest fires. Her job is to contain them. This is what a day for a smoke jumper is like.
We find a twin otter with the door off. We're all wearing earplugs, and everyone's kind of in their own world at that point.
And this flight can take up to a few hours, but it becomes clear when they're close.
Usually you smell that smoke. It's that piney, wood-burning smell. You know that it's go time. You get in the door, and that's when you really got to focus. Your heart is pounding, and then they slap you on your shoulder. And I don't even really think about it. I just go out of the plane. I try not to look at the ground or the fire at that point. You're just super focused.
And that was just part one. Now they fight the fire.
I've been to so many forest fires, and yeah, every jump is different.
But it's not a profession for everyone.
That adrenaline is something that's a big part of keeping me coming back. I do stop and think, wow, I am really lucky to be in this job.
When we think about volcanoes, we imagine these eruptive, hot, violent gateways to the center of the Earth. And I spoke to a scientist who spends the night in them.
My name is Ken Sims, and I'm a professor of isotope geology at the University of Wyoming.
Ken studies, among other things, volcanoes. And it's for a few reasons, but one in particular.
You can start to forecast its likelihood for another eruption.
To get his research data, he has to spend time in them, sometimes overnight. So we're talking about what it feels like to spend the night in an active volcano.
You're in a big crater. It's spectacular. This is like being in a deep, deep canyon, except for now it's circular all the way around you. There's a lava lake below you, and the summit is above you.
Volcanoes have a particular smell because they're full of gas.
Those gases are very sulfurous, so they smell strong and acrid. They also have acids in them, and so they're toxic.
The air can be dangerous to breathe in.
You know, you oftentimes are wearing gas masks, but it's pretty hard to sleep with gas masks.
And it's noisy.
It's echoey, typically. You'll hear hissing.
Instead of a campfire, there's an active lava lake.
But looking at a lava lake is just phenomenal that way. It's mesmerizing. And there's something about the red, warm glow. It's unworldly.
There's a lot to distract you from sleep. But Sims says none of that matters.
You don't want to go to bed. I mean, this is how the Earth's surface formed, was from volcanoes. And if you're in the moment, it's amazing.
That's so cool.